She never expected to see Winterbrook again, not after everything she left behind. The city had become her refuge, a place where nobody knew her scars. But when exhaustion finally caught up with her, she had no choice but to leave. Her doctor insisted she take time away from the endless demands of her job. So she packed a single suitcase and drove toward the mountains. Snowflakes dusted her windshield, as if urging her to slow down. Yet nothing could slow the dread building in her chest. Winterbrook looked exactly as she remembered, soft, quiet, painfully familiar. Christmas decorations lined every porch, glowing against the falling snow. The scent of pine and wood smoke drifted through the cold air. She tightened her grip on the steering wheel as old memories resurfaced. Memories of nights spent beneath these same lights with someone she once adored. Someone whose absence had carved a permanent ache in her heart. She exhaled shakily, reminding herself she was only staying for a week. Her parents' cabin sat at the edge of the forest, still and untouched by time. She unlocked the door and stepped inside, greeted by the echo of silence. It felt both comforting and suffocating all at once. She dropped her bag on the couch and rubbed her temples. The city's noise never let her think, but silence made her remember. And remembering was dangerous when it came to her. She pushed the thought away and lit a fire for warmth. The crackling flames eased her muscles, but not her mind. She wandered through the small cabin, touching things she hadn't seen in years. Her fingers brushed the edge of an old photograph face down on a shelf. She knew exactly which picture it was without turning it over. She had hidden it there after the breakup, unable to throw it away. Even now, her chest tightened at the thought of seeing that smile again. A smile that had once made her feel like home belonged to a person. The next morning, she ventured into town for coffee and fresh air. Snow crunched beneath her boots as she walked down the familiar road. Shops were decorated with wreaths and golden ribbons for the season. People she once knew waved at her with warm surprise. She returned their greetings politely, avoiding long conversations. She couldn't risk anyone mentioning her name. Not yet, not before she gathered courage to face the possibility. The cafe looked the same, with its frosted windows and glowing lanterns. She ordered a coffee and sat near the door, watching snow fall softly. For a moment, it felt peaceful, almost like healing was possible. But then a voice she knew too well drifted from outside. It was soft, warm, the kind that once melted every layer of her defenses. Her heart stuttered painfully inside her chest. She kept her gaze down, praying it was just her imagination. But the footsteps approached, slow and unmistakable. She felt the air shift before she dared to look up. And when she did, she saw the woman she had spent years avoiding. Evelyn stood there, framed by falling snow and Christmas lights. Her expression was frozen between shock and something unreadable. Memories crashed through her like a wave she couldn't outrun. In that instant, she knew Christmas had trapped her exactly where she feared. Evelyn didn't move at first, as if unsure whether to speak or run. Her eyes softened, but there was a hesitance beneath the surface. She opened her mouth as if to greet her, then closed it again. The tension between them thickened like fog in winter air. She gripped her coffee cup tightly, trying to steady her breath. Every memory of their last conversation surged back painfully. Silence stretched between them like an unfinished sentence. Finally, Evelyn managed a small, fragile smile. "Didn't think I'd see you here again," she said quietly. The sound of her voice made something inside her chest tremble. She forced a polite expression, though her pulse raced wildly. "I'm just visiting for a week," she replied, steady but distant. Evelyn nodded, as if pretending the distance didn't sting. And both women seemed unsure where to place their hands or their hearts. The cafe door opened, breaking the heavy tension. Someone brushed past them, muttering an apology. Evelyn stepped slightly to the side, giving her space. But the closeness still made her breath uneven. She hated how easily old feelings resurfaced. Time had changed everything and nothing all at once. And she wasn't sure she was strong enough to handle it. Evelyn looked at her again, this time with more courage. "I heard you moved to the city." Big job, right? She asked softly. She nodded, unsure how much to reveal. It's demanding, she answered, choosing her words carefully. Evelyn studied her, noticing the exhaustion she tried to hide. You look tired, she murmured, almost tenderly. That simple concern hit harder than any question. She didn't know how to respond, so she looked away. The snow outside thickened, brushing softly against the windows. Evelyn followed her gaze, her expression turning thoughtful. You always hated winter, she said with a small laugh. She blinked, startled. Evelyn still remembered. Every preference, every weakness, every tiny detail. And somehow, that terrified her more than anything. The cafe began filling with people escaping the cold. The noise around them grew, but neither moved to leave. It was as if they were suspended in a moment between past and present. She tried to find something neutral to say, something safe. But Evelyn spoke first, her voice lower this time. Maybe we could talk sometime. Properly. The suggestion cut through her defenses like a warm blade. She swallowed hard, unsure whether to accept or flee. Talking meant reopening wounds she had barely survived. But avoiding Evelyn felt impossible now that they'd collided. A part of her longed for answers she never received. Another part wanted to run back to the cabin and lock the door. Finally, she nodded, hesitant but sincere. Maybe, she murmured, sealing a promise she didn't fully understand. After leaving the cafe, she walked quickly through the snow-coated streets. Her heart still pounded, replaying the encounter in relentless loops. Seeing Evelyn again had cracked open a door she thought she'd sealed. The familiar ache settled beneath her ribs like a returning ghost. She wrapped her scarf tighter, trying to breathe through the storm inside her. The town around her buzzed with Christmas energy, oblivious to her turmoil. All she wanted was to hide, but Winterbrook had other plans. She reached the cabin and shut the door behind her with trembling hands. The silence felt heavier after Evelyn's voice still echoed in her mind. She leaned against the door, letting her breath shake freely now. Why now? She whispered to the empty room, eyes burning. Why did Christmas always bring back everything she tried to forget? Snowflakes tapped gently against the window as if offering comfort. But comfort felt useless when the past had claws so sharp. She lit the fireplace again, hoping warmth would settle her thoughts. The flames danced in a rhythm that reminded her of calm, steady days. Days when Evelyn used to curl beside her with a book and a blanket. She shut her eyes, trying to push the image away before it hurt too much. But Evelyn's face at the cafe kept resurfacing, older, softer, sadder. It was the sadness that shook her most. Evelyn had seemed wounded. Wounded in ways she didn't understand yet. She tried distracting herself by cooking, but her hands shook too much. Every slice of the knife felt like cutting through memories instead of vegetables. Eventually she gave up, leaning over the counter in exhaustion. A week, that's all she had to survive. 1 week to keep old scars from tearing open again. But deep down, she already knew it wouldn't be that simple. Winterbrook had never let her escape anything easily. Later, she stepped outside to clear her mind and breathe the cold air. The forest behind the cabin stretched quiet and untouched. Her boots sank softly into the fresh snow as she walked. Birds rustled in distant branches, filling the silence with small life. She used to love this path, especially with Evelyn hand in hand beside her. She paused, closing her eyes as the ache grew heavier. Everything here was a reminder she wasn't prepared to face. A twig snapped behind her, making her turn sharply. For a moment her breath hitched, fearing it was Evelyn again. But it was just a deer, watching her with curious stillness. She exhaled shakily, relieved and disappointed at the same time. It was foolish. She didn't want to see Evelyn, not really. Yet part of her couldn't deny the pull that reunion had awakened. The past wasn't done with her, and she wasn't sure she was done with it. As she headed back inside, her phone buzzed unexpectedly. A message appeared on the screen, short, cautious, unmistakable. If you're up for talking, I'll be at the old bookstore tomorrow. Her chest tightened, heartbeat suddenly erratic. Evelyn had reached out sooner than she expected. And now she had a choice she'd been dreading for years: run from the past, or finally face the only woman who ever broke her. Morning arrived wrapped in a pale winter glow, quiet and expectant. She barely slept, turning over every possibility of the conversation ahead. What if Evelyn wanted closure? What if she wanted forgiveness? What if she wanted nothing at all, just politeness? The uncertainty knotted her stomach until she could barely breathe. Still, she dressed carefully, choosing warmth over style. This wasn't a reunion she wanted to look brave for, just honest. The old bookstore sat on the corner near Winterbrook Square. Its windows were frosted, its shelves always smelling of pine and paper. She used to spend hours there with Evelyn, reading side by side. Now, approaching the door felt like stepping into a memory too bright. She hesitated, feeling the cold seep through her gloves. But running would only make everything worse. With a deep breath, she pushed the door open. Warmth enveloped her instantly, fireplace heat and old books. The shop was quiet except for soft instrumental Christmas music. She scanned the aisles with tight nerves, searching for Evelyn. It didn't take long. Evelyn stood in the back, holding a book gently. Her profile looked delicate in the golden light of the lamp. Her brow furrowed, as if she was rehearsing thoughts she couldn't speak. For a moment, she just watched, unable to move. Evelyn turned, almost sensing her presence, and their eyes met. This time, there was no surprise, only a deep, careful sadness. "Thanks for coming," Evelyn said softly, closing the book. Her voice held a tremor she hadn't heard in years. She nodded, stepping closer, though her pulse raced painfully. The distance between them felt charged, bittersweet. Old love, old wounds, and unspoken truths hung in the air. "I didn't think you'd ever come back here," Evelyn admitted. Her fingers brushed the edge of the book nervously. "I wasn't planning to," she answered, her honesty sharp but gentle. Evelyn nodded as if she expected nothing less. "Still, I'm glad you did, even if it's just temporary." The sincerity in her voice pulled at something deep inside her. It was terrifying how one sentence could unravel years of distance. They both moved to a small reading corner near the fireplace. The chairs were close enough to share warmth, but not touch. Evelyn looked at her with eyes filled with questions and regret. "I owe you an apology," she began, voice low but steady. The words hit her like a sudden gust of winter wind. They'd never talked about the breakup. Not truly, not calmly. Hearing Evelyn say those words felt like reopening an old wound. "I hurt you," Evelyn continued, eyes glistening faintly. "And I never gave you the explanation you deserved." The fire crackled, filling the silence between them. Her chest tightened, unsure if she was ready to hear any of it. But she nodded, giving permission she didn't fully understand. Evelyn took a slow breath, gathering courage like fragile glass. And the truth, long buried, finally began to rise. On Christmas night, the small town seemed frozen in time, glowing under strings of lights that shimmered over the fresh snow. Evelyn walked slowly toward the farm, her heartbeat trying to match the distant church bells. She didn't know exactly what she would say, only that she couldn't let Harper slip away again without hearing the truth. When she reached the barn, the door was slightly open, almost like an invitation. Harper was inside, facing away, sorting through old boxes. Evelyn took a deep breath, maybe for the first time without fear. The moment had finally come. Harper turned when she heard footsteps, and the surprise on her face softened into something vulnerable. Evelyn felt the weight of years hanging between them, swallowed words, poorly delivered goodbyes, dreams abandoned too early. But this was a different life now. "I shouldn't have escaped the city just to run from you again," Evelyn admitted, her voice quiet but steady. Harper sighed, as if that confession cracked open the walls she'd built around herself. Maybe I was waiting for you to come back." The silence that followed wasn't cold. It was full, pulsing with memories and possibilities. Evelyn stepped closer, the scent of wood and hay pulling old nights and laughter from the corners of her mind. "I loved you so much it hurt," she confessed, "and leaving felt easier than admitting I still do." Harper's eyes shone, her defenses melting like frost in sunlight. I loved you too. And when you left, I thought Christmas would never feel the same again. Two tired hearts, finally unmasking themselves. Harper approached slowly, as if afraid of breaking something fragile. I just don't want to be your temporary escape from the city, she whispered. Evelyn offered a soft, remorseful smile, but with courage behind it. You never were. I ended up here because my heart had been here all along. I just needed time to realize it. Harper looked away, too emotional to speak. So Evelyn reached for her hand, and that small touch shattered the last barrier between them. It felt like coming home, to a home that never stopped waiting. A snowflake drifted through the open barn door, settling on Harper's shoulder like a gentle reminder. If there's still a place for me in your life, I want to stay, Evelyn said, her voice steady and honest. Harper let out a trembling laugh, squeezing her hand. You never stop having a place. And there, in that cold barn, they found each other again, not as scared young lovers, but as two women finally brave enough to accept a love they once denied. Harper leaned closer, and Evelyn responded before thought could intervene. The kiss wasn't desperate or rushed. It was warm, deep, overflowing with all the years they'd spent apart and everything they could still build together. Outside, fireworks began cracking softly in the distance, a long-standing tradition marking Christmas midnight. Harper smiled against Evelyn's lips. Want to celebrate with my family? Evelyn laughed, light and free. Only if you stay by my side. Harper took her hand, as if the answer had always been obvious. Christmas was gaining a new meaning for both. On the porch, Harper's family welcomed Evelyn with open arms, making room for her as if she were someone who had simply returned to where she belonged. By the tall tree in the yard, Evelyn realized the town she once tried to leave behind was the only home that ever made sense. Harper intertwined their fingers and whispered, "This time, we won't lose each other." And Evelyn knew they wouldn't. Under the shimmering Christmas snowfall, they chose each other, finally, completely forever.